welcome to the Stitches and Scribbles channel. My name is Erin and I have a washcloth tutorial for you today. So today we're doing another simple knit washcloth. If you missed the first washcloth tutorial that I posted, it should be about a month ago from when this goes up, you can definitely check that out because I have a different pattern that I did. I'm now forgetting the name of the stitch. The moss stitch. I did a moss stitch knit washcloth earlier, but for this one I decided to do the hurdle stitch, which is still a alternating knit purl pattern, but you've also got some rows of just plain knits in there, and it still creates that lovely like scrubby texture. And this is just going to be another one in my washcloth series, so without further ado, let's jump into the tutorial. For this washcloth tutorial, you're going to need some knitting needles. I am using size 6 US circular needles. Yours do not have to be circular. This is just what I had on hand, but straight needles, of course, are totally fine. You're also going to need some yarn. I am using the Lily Sugar and Cream 100% cotton in the color Garden Party. So some lovely shades of pinks and purples, magentas, that kind of stuff. I would recommend a 100% cotton yarn if you are making this as a washcloth. If you're just doing this as a stitch to use for something else, you can of course use what you want. The stitch that we're going to be doing today is called the hurdle stitch, but we're going to start first with a long tail cast on. So I'm leaving a long tail, hence the term long tail cast on, and creating a slip knot in order to start my cast on process. This stitch requires a multiple of 2 stitches, and I am just going to kind of go until I get to my desired width. So I have now put my slip knot onto my needle, and I'm going to begin the long tail cast on. So I have my yarn positioned so that the yarn attached to the rest of the skein is over my index finger, and the yarn from the tail that we made is over my thumb. I'm then going to insert the needle under that loop from my thumb, and then also under the loop from my index finger. Then that open loop that's on my thumb, I'm going to pull it over the end of the needle, which only leaves 1 loop on my needle. So now I have 2 stitches total. We're going to do that process again. So under the thumb, under the index finger, and then pull the thumb loop over everything. Now I have 3 stitches. Let's do it again. So hook through the thumb, hook through the index finger, bring the thumb loop over, and tighten it up. So that's 4 stitches, and 5, 6. So now that I have 6 stitches on the needle, instead of just guessing, I'm actually going to check how many stitches I did in my previous washcloth tutorial. Alright, I apparently did 30 stitches in my last washcloth tutorial, so we're going to do the same here. So I have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. So just enough of a width that it matches what size you want your washcloth to be. Now we're going to get into our stitch, which, as I said before, is called the hurdle stitch. This one has a repeat of 4 rows, so 4 patterns that we'll be completing, although they are actually the same for some rows. So row 1 is going to be a knit all row, and that means exactly what it sounds like. We're going to knit all the way across. So to knit your first stitch, you're going to insert your needle, so that it is behind the needle with the stitches on it. Wrap your yarn and then pull that loop under and let your old loop fall off. Do that a couple more times pretty slowly. So insert your needle, wrap your yarn, pull it under, and slide the old loop off. That is your knit stitch. Hopefully if you're at the point of doing a tutorial like this, you've already practiced the knit stitch on a couple of other pieces. But if you haven't, this is still a fairly beginner-friendly pattern for you to work on. So we're going to continue knitting all the way across so that we have our first row completed. And the texture we're going to get from this stitch pattern is quite a scrubby one as well, so that will work in your favor if you're making it as a washcloth, although I think this would make a beautiful scarf or cowl or decorative item as well. Almost to the end. And just a couple more. All right, and now you've completed row 1. Row 2 is the same as row 1. We're just going to knit all the way across. So, got an easy start to this project. I kind of love patterns like this that have rows in them of all knit stitches, because it means that you can kind of turn your brain off for the rows that are knit all, especially if you're a more experienced knitter. It makes it quite easy to get a couple rows in. And on this one, the other 2 rows are pretty simple as well, so not too much of a challenge otherwise. Gotta pull out some yarn. I always forget to do that when I film tutorials, to like pull out enough yarn that I can get a couple of rows in before my next step, but then you just get to see me do it on camera. Keep knitting all the way across. All right, and now you've completed your second row. So 2 rows of knit all. Now we get into the slightly more advanced part of this pattern. Our rows 3 and 4 are going to alternate knit 1, purl 1 all the way across. So if you did the moss stitch washcloth tutorial, this should feel very familiar to you. We're going to knit our first stitch and purl our second stitch. And I'll slow that down for those of you who are more on the beginner end. So we knit our first stitch just like the last row. Then to purl, you want to bring your yarn to the front, insert your needle so that the working needle is in front instead of the needle with the stitches on it. Wrap your yarn and kind of push it under and let the loop fall off. So it is very much like a backwards knit stitch. And I'll show that purl one more time. So I've brought my yarn to the front, inserted my needle, wrap, and push it under and let the old loop fall off. We're going to alternate those knits and purls all the way across. Once you practice knitting and purling a lot, alternating each stitch like this should become pretty easy for you, especially if you've practiced lots of knit all rows and purl all rows in other projects. Sorry if you can hear me sniffling, it's hopefully the end of cold season. Keep going all the way across. Alright, and you should end with a purl. Now we're going to do our 4th row in the repeat, which is the final row of the repeat. And that is a knit 1, purl 1 row again. So if you watched the moss stitch tutorial, you know that in the moss stitch washcloth, we were kind of checkerboarding our stitches. So we were doing the reverse stitches on following rows. That is not what we're doing for the hurdle stitch. We want our knit stitches to line up with knit stitches and the purl stitches to line up with purl stitches. So a knit stitch from the front is going to look like this V shape, and a purl stitch is going to look like this horizontal stitch across. So I know I need to start with a knit stitch because I have a knit stitch directly below, and then do a purl stitch, and so on. So again, we're going to alternate knits and purls, starting with a knit stitch and ending with a purl stitch. And again, the way that this works up, it's going to give it a really delightful scrubby texture, which will make it both pretty and functional as a washcloth. This is another stitch that is going to look really neat with a variegated yarn because you'll really see those stitches pop out. And it's not so crazy that it gets lost in a variegated yarn. Alright, and that is your repeat. So, to restate what we did, row 1 is knit all, row 2 is knit all, row 3 is knit 1, purl 1, and row 4 is knit 1, purl 1. You're going to continue the pattern of these 4 rows until you reach your desired length, but I'll check in a little bit and show you what mine is working up to look like. This is what it looks like when you've got quite a few rows built up. I'm about maybe between a third and halfway done with my total washcloth. So it creates this very fun textured fabric, but you can still clearly see the ribbed sections and the garter stitch sections. And it's called the hurdle stitch because it kind of makes these little ridges like hurdles that you would jump over. But this creates a very scrubby textured stitch, and it's also easily repeatable and memorizable. So let's keep going until we reach our desired length. I am going to end with two knit all rows instead of ending with knit 1, purl 1s, just so that we get a clean edge like we did at the beginning. Once your washcloth is your desired length, probably about a square, then we can start casting off. Now, since I ended with a regular knit row, I don't really have to do anything special for my cast off because I don't need to cast off in the pattern of the rib stitches. I can just cast off with all knit stitches. So we're going to do just a basic cast off because we don't really need this material to be stretchy or anything, so we'll just do the simple one. So you're going to knit 1 and knit a second stitch. So So you should have 2 on your needle. Then you're going to take the needle in your non-dominant hand and pull up that first knit stitch you did and pull it over the second one. And I usually like to kind of scoot my stitch out a little bit so that I have more space. Then to continue casting off, you're going to knit 1 and pull 1 stitch over, whoops, over the other, preferably without pulling all of your stitches off of the needle. You're just going to keep going in that pattern. And this is going to give you a finished edge that looks pretty similar to your long tail cast on, which is kind of nice that you, unless you're an experienced knitter, you won't be able to tell the difference between the top and the bottom. I apologize if you just heard my heat kick on. It's rather cold here today. We got some surprise snow last night that I think was in the forecast, but I'm not really sure. Started right at the end of the school day, so my students were absolutely losing their minds that it was snowing again. Because how dare it snow in February in Wisconsin? We had a couple of like 50, 60 degree days before that, so the snow was definitely not expected, at least by 5th graders. You're just going to continue that pattern across so that you cast off all of your stitches. I really like doing a cast off edge. It's kind of satisfying to see all of the stitches just get worked in and bound off. Only a few more. I tried a different lighting setup for this tutorial than I have in my previous ones, and I'm hoping it's a little bit easier to see what I'm doing. So let me know if this setup worked better for you as a viewer, because I think I got some more light in, and I repositioned my camera so that it's not quite so close to my hands so that I don't have to worry about bumping it so much. I think it turned out better, but you'll have to let me know in the comments. Just a few stitches left. And last one. So once you have 1 stitch left, you can go ahead and trim your yarn, leaving a little bit of length so that you can weave in the ends, and then just pull it through, and that's it. So once you weave in your ends, you are done with your washcloth. And that's going to be it for this little washcloth. I hope you enjoyed seeing how to do the hurdle stitch and can add this to your scrubby washcloth collection. I will be doing one more crochet washcloth tutorial, and then after that we'll dive into some tutorials for how to add edging to your washcloth. So look forward to those coming up in the next couple of weeks or months to this channel. Thank you so much for watching. If you're interested in following me on other forms of social media, that information will be in the description box below. And if you want to see more crafty content from me right here on YouTube, make sure that you hit that subscribe button so that you can be notified of all of my videos right here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye everyone.